Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cultured Pull List. In today's episode, we're going to be covering a amazing Spider-Man story arc titled American Son. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hello, everyone. This is the Cultured Pull List. We are your hosts, Mike and Luke from Casual Experts. And if you are new to this podcast, what we basically do is we just break down a story arc or a graphic novel, comic, whatever, and we break it down and we talk about it, just kind of give our review on it. And then at the end, we do like a little bit of a smaller thing where we just talk about some other comics we've been reading. But this week we are going to be covering a amazing Spider-Man story arc called American Son. It's kind of a lesser known little arc, but I read this like a long time ago, and I remember this is like one of the Spider-Man stories that really stuck in my mind. Like when I was
Mm.
younger, like I don't know, like middle school, maybe early high school,
Okay.
I would just kind of hang out at my me and my mom would hang out at our local library a lot, and they had like this huge collection of Spider-Man graphic novels, and I don't know how long it took me, but I read through pretty much all of them.
Oh yeah.
But this was one of them, and this was one of the ones that really stuck in my brain, and I kind of just remembered it recently. I was like, oh, and it kind of
Mm.
goes along with Secret Wars, which we did a couple
Yeah.
weeks
Secret
ago.
Invasion. Yeah.
Yeah, Secret Invasion,
Yeah.
which we did do an episode on that. If you have not checked it out, I would definitely suggest you do so. But this kind of goes along with that because at the end of there's kind of a period after this called the Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn is up to some stuff. Because at the end of Secret Wars, he leads the Thunderbolts to help like the Avengers and everybody to fight the Skrulls, and he ends up dealing the final blow on the Skrull Queen, and that's captured on video. So and everyone kind of blames Tony Stark. So Tony Stark is kind of thrown to the wayside, and Norman Osborn is given control over like everything. Like they dissolve Shield and make Hammer, so he's in charge of Hammer, and he pretty much like is one of the most powerful people in the world at this point.
Hmm.
And but he's doing like he's still up to his old villainous tricks behind the scenes, and that leads into this whole Dark Reign storyline, and this Spider-Man story is kind of adjacent to that, is going on during that.
Hmm.
But Norman Osborn, with all his power, he basically reforms the Avengers, but they're called the Dark Avengers because half of them are villains.
Hmm.
The ones that are actually heroes on the team are Ares, Marvel Boy, I believe is his name. Novar, yeah. So he's now Captain Marvel. And Sentry. Those three are actually the heroes, but they're kind of easily manipulated, and Norman's able to get them on the team. But then Moonstone, the villain Moonstone, is pretending to be Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers. Venom is pretending to be Spider-Man, and this is Mac Gargan Venom, who he used to be Scorpion, but now he's Venom.
Hmm.
And he's portraying Spider-Man. He's pretending to be Spider-Man, and Bullseye is pretending to be Hawkeye, and Wolverine's son Dakin is pretending to be Wolverine,
Hmm.
and Norman Osborn actually stole one of Iron Man's suits and fashioned it in like a red, white, and blue color scheme and called himself Iron Patriot. So that's basically what's going on during all this, and that's kind of like all the backstory. Except there's one other thing. So Harry Osborn's ex girlfriend, Lily, she stumbled upon some stash of Norman Osborn's Goblin formula at one point, and she's the villain Menace.
Hmm.
And once Harry figured that out, they broke up. But she's basically like a Gray Goblin type character. But yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know backstory wise. This story arc was written by Joe Kelly. The artists were Phil Jimenez, Paulo Sequeira, Marco Cecchetto, and Steven Segovia. The inkers were Andy Lanning, Hamilton Santos, Marco Cecchetto, and Paulo Sequeira. The colors were Chris Chuckery and Jeremy Cox. The letterers were VC's Joe Carmagna and Chris Eliopoulos. So this story starts out with Harry Osborn and Peter Parker just hanging out at the park, just kind of chilling, and there's like this small but unimportant scene where Harry's kind of trying to show Pete how to pick up women, basically. But while they're at the park, one of the Dark Avenger, like Quinjet equivalents, flies overhead, and that just kind of reminds Harry that, oh, yeah, that's right, my dad sucks, and he's in control of everything. And it reminds Peter, oh, yeah, my arch nemesis is back, and he's, like, running the world, basically. So this is kind of driving Peter crazy. So he goes to his office, his work, which that is something I forgot to mention. Peter works at this news outlet called Frontline, run by Ben Urich. He quit the Daily Bugle shortly after J. Jonah Jameson left the Bugle and actually became mayor. Oh, and also Aunt May is engaged to J. Jonah Jameson's dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fun, and yeah, so that's causing some fun complications. But Peter goes to Frontline and basically like gives us some passion speech about how they need to take down Norman Osborn, and Ben Urich is basically like, yeah, we don't like have any real evidence on the dude, you know. As far as everyone else knows, he's running the Avengers, and he's like, you know, Iron Patriot, the American, the superhero. Because I think at this point too, I think yeah, Steve Rogers is dead, and
Yeah.
Captain America's Bucky,
Hmm.
but you know he's obviously not gonna be a part of Norman's agenda.
Right.
So he's kind of fashioned himself as the new Captain America. So Peter basically gets stonewalled by everyone at work, but this one girl, Nora Winters, what Peter says kind of seems to give her an idea. So we'll pick that up later. But shortly after that, Peter and his Spider-Man getup is hanging out with Wolverine on the top of a building, and he basically is just talking to Wolverine, trying to get his advice and just kind of bounce his thoughts off of him. And he reveals that he basically feels responsible for all the messed up stuff Norman's doing now, because he feels like he's had plenty of times to, you know, make sure Norman basically kill Norman, but you know he hasn't because of his morals and um, everything. And Logan, you know, just kind of says like, yeah, well, you know, um, that's life. No, like you know, he doesn't have a whole lot of help for him, except he does tell Peter like, you know, if you do chase after Norman and he does slip up and you do get a chance to end it permanently, take that chance. So, you know, he's basically like, yeah, you didn't kill him in the past, whatever, but, you know, if you get the chance now, take it.
Right.
So then we cut to, yeah, which is, I feel, is a very Wolverine thing to
Mm-hmm.
suggest. So then we go to Gracie Mansion, which is J. Jonah Jameson's house, because he's the mayor now. And there's this really awkward dinner that he's throwing for Aunt May and his dad. And Peter and J. Jonah Jameson aren't really doing a very good job hiding their contempt for each other. But then J. Jonah Jameson reveals his special surprise guest, which turns out to be Norman Osborn. And everyone there is pretty peeved about that. Even, well, Aunt May, but
Yeah.
even J. Jonah Jameson's dad, and he basically gives Norman an earful about he's a professional thug who hides his lust for power and contempt for common people behind the American flag. And then Norman makes some crack about Jay being a deserter. Or no, he was dishonorably discharged
Hmm.
from the army. So yeah, there's obviously a bit of bad blood in this at this dinner, but it turns out that Norman agreed to come to this dinner basically because he knew Harry was going to be there,
Hmm.
and he tries to convince Harry to give him a chance to um, show basically that he's changed, and like, you know, he basically wants to reconcile with Harry and make him a part of his future plans and everything. But Harry laughs in his face and leaves the dinner. But as he gets back to his apartment, his old flame Lily shows up in full menace regalia and reveals she has something to show Harry. So she transforms back into her normal form, and we don't see what she shows him at first. Because then we cut back to Norman, who's driving back home in his limo, and then suddenly Peter, as Spider-Man, rips off the roof of his limo and swings away with Norman and basically just beats the tar out of him and tells him, like, you better stay away from Harry. But right as and as he's doing this, he kind of remembers what Wolverine said, and seems like he's kind of contemplating actually murdering Norman. But
Mhm.
just then, Norman gets a phone call, and it turns out it's from Harry accepting his offer. And we go back to Harry, who ends the call, and we see that Lily's actually pregnant with their baby.
Mhm.
So then we cut to, I don't know if it's the next day or not, but another day, and we see Harry shaking hands with fake Spider-Man and basically being brought into the Norman Osborn Dark Avengers fold.
Mhm.
And we see this is actually playing out on a TV that Harry and Peter are watching, and Peter's basically giving Harry an earful about, like, how can you trust your dad for everything he's done, and they argue for a bit, and Peter just kind of reveals that he's really just worried about him, and Harry's been dealing with drug addiction, like narcotics, as well as Norman's Osborn
Mhm.
Green Goblin formula. So he's just worried about him, and Harry, basically says, "Thanks, Pete, but I can take care of myself." Um, so then we cut to Harry being shown around Avengers Tower by Norman. Norman shows him, like, this is secret elevator that's only for essential personnel, and um, yeah, we also do know that Lily works for Norman Osborn, but Norman won't really tell Harry, like, where, or she works or where she is. But you
Mhm.
know, Lily went to Harry, and we'll find out more why she did. But then we also see that Nora Winters, Peter's coworker, seems to have gotten a job there and is kind of flirting with one of the security guys there. We'll circle back to that later.
Mhm.
Then we cut to Peter, who is helping MJ, or not MJ, Aunt May and Jay plan their wedding, and Peter and Jay get a quick moment together, and Jay basically explains to Peter that he was dishonorably discharged from the army because he deserted. I think he was like, I think he was in Vietnam.
I think they said
Uh,
Korea is what they said.
Korea. Okay,
Yeah.
he was in Korea, and his wife was pregnant and giving birth to J. Jonah Jameson, and the army wouldn't let him go back to see her. So he basically went, and he deserted and went back to the U.S. And he said he doesn't regret it because he was there for his child's birth,
Mhm.
as well as the last few moments of his wife's life, because she died
Right.
soon after childbirth. Um, but he just felt like he needed to explain that to Peter, so they have like a little moment there. Um, then we cut back to Harry and Norman is trying to convince Harry to take this vaccine, basically, because there's a lot of pathogens they'll be dealing with all this, like, R&D sciencey stuff, and Harry isn't on board at first because he's afraid he's going to put some other stuff. He just doesn't trust him that it's really what he says it is, and but he eventually agrees, and we see Lily watching them from whatever office or apartment she's at or whatever. Then we cut to Peter later, and he's bringing coffee to Harry, I guess just to hang with him, and he sees Nora there at Avengers Tower, and she explains that his impassioned speech earlier gave her the idea to go undercover in Avengers Tower and get some dirt on Norman Osborn and the Avengers and everything. And Peter kind of chides her and says, tells her what she's doing is super dangerous, and she gets mad and kind of storms off. And Peter turns and sees Venom, fake Spider-Man, and Bullseye, fake Hawkeye, swinging around, and that just kind of pisses him off even more. So we then see where Venom and Hawkeye went to, and they went to the bad part of town so that Venom could eat a prostitute, basically.
Mhm.
But before he can actually hurt the prostitute, Spider-Man shows up with this like high frequency backpack to take down Venom. Meanwhile, Bullseye's picking his nose, and he isn't able to hear Spider-Man and Venom fighting because Invisible Woman is there as well, and she makes this force field box blocking any sound. And Spider-Man is able to trap Venom in this containment cell, and Invisible Woman presents Spider-Man with this mock-up Venom suit. Basically, it's like there's these made of unstable molecules that um, will allow him to look like Venom. Basically, like he'll look like Black Suit Spider-Man, but then the mask can like transform into Venom's face and everything. And like Reed Richards designed it for him.
Yeah.
So then we go back to Harry, which is really creepy. He's got a camera in his room, just watching him sleep. But Harry uses this little device to fry the camera, and then he opens this gadget briefcase he has, and we're not sure what he's up to yet. But meanwhile, Norman Osborn calls a meeting with the Dark Avengers, and during the meeting, Dakin seems to be smelling Spider-Man. It seems a little suspicious, but turns out he says he just smells blood, or you have blood on you. And Norman reveals to the Dark Avengers that he has a plan for Harry and the project is called American Sun. And he then takes them all into like his lab, and we see that he's designed this American flag style armor, and that he's basically this new like American Sun is basically going to be like the heart and soul of America, because like he feels like Iron Patriot demonstrates the strength of the U.S., but he wants somebody who embodies like the heart that Captain America did. So that's what his plans are for Harry. But not only will this American Sun have the armor, but he's also going to have some super soldier serum, and it seems like he's mixing his goblin serum with the super soldier serum, and the experiments haven't gone well. As one jumps out and tries to kill Osborn, but Spider-Man actually saves him, as Venom, and he kind of is like, like how easy would it have been for me to just stand there and let him get his head cleaved off, basically. But then he turns to Osborn and is like, you're gonna do this to your son, turn him into some freak? And they're like, no, we already stabilized the serum. So it seems like the serum is now in working order. Then we cut to Harry. It seems like he's trying to get into his dad's office with these this like glove he has, but then he's pulled into a dark corner, seemingly by Menace, by Lily, and it turns out it is Lily, and it's revealed at this point that Harry's there to try and find a cure. Like they think his dad has a cure for Lily that'll take away the effects of the goblin serum on her and her baby. And they also think that once she isn't Menace anymore, Norman won't have any use for her and will get rid of her, so they'll basically be able to get away from Norman and not have him in their lives anymore. And Lily's actually able to slip Harry a key card so he can get into like the secret labs in his dad's office and everything. So back to Norman and the Dark Avengers. Norman orders Venom, aka real Spider-Man, to go on watch duty, and as he goes to do this, he's attacked by Dakin, who says he can reveals he can tell he's not the real Venom because of his smell, basically. And Spider-Man gets the upper hand for a second, but it seems like Dakin releases these pheromones into the air that seems to mess with Peter's senses, like his sight and everything, but he's able to focus only on his spider sense, and that's how he's able to take out Dakin. But just when he defeats him, Harry shows up, and Spider-Man basically says, like, I'm on your side, I've got your back. But Harry isn't having it because he hates Spider-Man for several different reasons. But he keeps saying like, well, what? He said like everything was going to plan. Why do you have to mess this up? And just then Norman shows up with the other Dark Avengers, and Peter tries to say that Dakin attacked Harry, and he was just saving Harry. But Norman turns to Harry and says, "Like, is that true?" And Harry says, "Nope, Spider-Man's lying." And so then Bullseye shoots Peter in the legs with his arrows,
Mhm.
and then Norman takes out a gun and shoots him in the face.
Yep. Yep.
And that is how that half ends.
Mhm. Yeah. So just for everyone's on the same page, I'm holding a dog in one hand. So if you hear anything in the background, that's what that is.
What's
Um,
his name?
his name's Dasher. I'm actually babysitting
Dasher.
for my family. Some of them are out of town. So yeah, and
Nice.
he's not behaving, so I have to hold on to him. Okay.
Dogs.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So this picks up, assuming it's a couple hours later, because this looks like early morning.
Yeah.
Harry is in, I think it's his dad's office, although I'm not sure. They're talking about what just happened with Spider-Man. They're talking about how he's not dead, but he will be, because we'll find out later that I think Bullseye is torturing him, I think.
Yeah.
And this is the part where Norman reveals the American Son program to his son, and he's
Mm-hmm.
not exactly thrilled by it because he's been sober for a while and he feels like more substances in his body is not really what he needs right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as we mentioned, we cut back to Spider-Man who's being tortured by Bullseye, and then if we flash back to Invisible Woman, who this is revealed where the suit is like unbalanced molecules, so it
Mm-hmm.
behaves similar to the Venom symbiote. And so basically, they're hitting him and they're torturing him, but they can't really get the suit off, so they can't really figure out who he is. And so there's like a little
Yeah, it's
bet.
also got like a. Think there was like a failsafe read installed where if like he got captured or something, the suit
Yes,
would kind of go into lockdown and like
right, right.
become super dense. I think is the idea. I don't know.
Yeah, 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 something like that. Yeah, and then they have a little bet where it's like I think Norman will give Bullseye 10 million if he kills Spider-Man before dinner or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we cut back to Nora. I think is that her name, right? Nora
Yeah.
spelled
Yeah.
with an H for some reason. Um, yeah, she's still working her way up the ladder and trying to figure out all the secrets. And and then we have more torture stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Harry is now at the facility looking at the armor, the American Sun armor, and all the failed experiments that came before. And then Spider-Man kind of goes into like a delirium thing where he's like
Mm.
flashing through all these different people and memories, and he's debating with himself whether or not he should really be here right now because Harry doesn't even want her to be here, and so he's
Mm-hmm.
saving Harry. And then dinner time arrives apparently, and well, he passed out, and then he wakes up. It's dinner time, and so Bullseye didn't make his bet, but then Norman has like an Iron Man repulsor, and so he's able to shoot Spider-Man with it. And then we cut to the next scene where um, uh, Harry's with Lily,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're kind of cut back and forth really quick between both. So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
explain one, then I'm going to explain the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Harry, they have the exact same haircut, so hard to tell the difference between the
Yeah.
two.
Right.
Harry got the antidote, and so he's going to give it to Lily, but it turns out that she was working for Harry this whole time, and
You mean Norman?
yeah, Norman, yeah, Norman, this whole time, and so it was just kind of a setup to get Harry to Oscorp.
Mm-hmm.
And while this is happening, um, Norman hits Peter with the repulsor, and it's starting to work to wear his suit off a little bit, but yeah, this is the reveal that I was telling you about. But then
Mm-hmm.
Peter's able to get free, and then he starts fighting Bullseye and Norman, and then I think Menace gets away on like a little glider thing,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, Peter and Norman are fighting. He tries to get the mask off, but then Harry shows up
Mm-hmm.
in the American Sun armor because he's pretty pissed off with the whole Lily situation that he was set
Well,
up.
yeah. also Lily revealed that
Oh yeah, I thought that was later, but yeah, Lily revealed that the child wasn't actually Harry's; it was Norman's.
Norman's. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've heard about this reveal at some point. It was like on a video or somewhere. It was like 10 dark twists in Marvel or something like that, where it's like actually,
Oh, yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I've definitely heard about this moment, although I didn't actually read this story before.
Right.
But yeah, so Harry shows up at the last minute, and Spider-Man is pretty not in a good condition.
Yeah.
So the next fight is mostly between Harry and Norman, and then we flash back to kind of a moment I think in college, where Peter
Yeah.
and Harry are just kind of just bonding, and they're like, "Well, I guess we're not actual brothers, but we're more or less brothers at this point."
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, they keep fighting, and uh, yeah, they and Spider-Man, like, I don't know what's happening. There's like this sort of thing that's like covering his face. I don't know what that
Well, I
is.
think the like final like the final remnants of the mask are fading away
Okay, sure.
because like
Um,
that's like what the repulsor did. It would like it stabilized the molecules and like made them dissolve basically.
got you. So they're fighting, and then it knocks them out of Avengers Tower and into
Hmm.
Central Park. And um, Peter and Harry have a moment before Harry goes off to fight his dad, and the whole tower is evacuating. And Nora takes a moment to kind of like, I think, I don't know if she actually gets any more information. I think it's maybe this is where she leaves. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Um, but then we get back to Central Park, where Norman is trying to cover it up, like, oh, it's a training exercise. Don't worry about it. Police officers and firefighters and all that. Just we
Hmm.
got it under control. Um, yeah, and then Spider-Man does show up to help Harry. He has like this, like a bag over his head. Um, and then yeah, and then there's a moment where Harry's about to kill his dad right over here, and the Wolverine monologue kind of flashes back in Peter's mind, and he's trying to talk Harry out of killing his dad, and then eventually
Hmm.
they just kind of walk away, and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm no longer your son anymore. Have a good time with all your evil stuff." And and then Peter just has enough time to uh, like sign himself up in the urgent care facility, where he meets with Aunt May and Jay, her fiance. And then I guess Harry's back in rehab. Just come on, we're almost done. Harry's back in rehab, talking about all the substances. He can't mention the Goblin Serum, obviously, but talking
Hmm.
about all the other substances and all that. And then the two final panels. I don't really understand what this is, but Nora is talking to her boss. I guess that's Ben Urich about
Yeah.
her story, and then something comes up on her computer, and she's like, "Actually, never mind. I don't have a story. I don't really
Yeah,
get
I
what that's
think
about."
like I think the guy she met, like that security guy, like like sent her some information.
Mm,
But yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like that guy on the screen is that guy being
okay,
tortured by Norman. And I
got
think
you.
Norman's voice, like, then he throws up footage of her and says, like, I never forget people who meddle in my
Okay,
affairs. I think it's supposed to be Norman scaring her off.
got you. Okay, and then the final page is Norman's talking to his child, his future son, about how he's going to be the Goblin Prince, and that is the end of the story.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of spoiler here, but in a later story, it's actually revealed that the kid actually is Harry's.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting.
So it's almost like a more demented version of, like the Last Crusade, where
Mm.
in Indiana Jones and his dad sleep with the same girl.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but yeah, I mentioned earlier this isn't my first time reading it, but I haven't read it for like over 10 years.
Mhm.
But yeah, this was your first time reading it. What'd you think?
I'm not sure because a lot of the classic Spider-Man elements are here, but for some
Mm-hmm.
reason it's just not really working for me. I don't really know
Mm-hmm.
why. I
Mm-hmm.
like the ending with the fight with Harry and Norman, but other than that, I'm not really sure. It's just not something's not clicking with me. I don't know. It's not like a bad story. I don't know. I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would. That
Sure.
makes
All
sense.
right. Fair. Yeah, I mean, for me, this is kind of part of the like early 2000s era of
Sure.
Spider-Man
Yeah.
that I kind of grew up with and I really like. I like because it's a lot more like serious and mature in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And this really like kind of delves into how messed up
Yes.
Norman Osborn is.
Yes.
And there's even like the conversation between Norman and Harry about like
Mhm.
Norman basically says like, I kept trying to make you a better son, but you just won't. So now I'm like starting over with a new son. You're not my son
Right.
anymore.
Right.
Kind of thing, which is like super messed up. And I feel like that like always stuck with me. I'm like, holy hell,
Mhm.
Norman Osborn's a piece of shit,
For sure. For sure. For sure.
but yeah, I mean, like definitely some nostalgia like factors into
Right.
like
Yeah.
what I
And it's
like about this,
mhm.
but like it's not like the best Spider-Man story, but I do
Sure.
think it's kind of an interesting era of Marvel.
Yeah. For
And kind of
sure.
an interesting era of Spider-Man, and I feel like just the whole like infiltration thing where Spider-Man pretends to
Mhm.
be Venom was really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like it's definitely not a story that's talked about too much.
Mhm.
And I do like the American Son suit. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, pretty interesting. There's like so many like Spider-Man stories that it honestly took me a while to find this one because
Mhm.
all I really remembered was um, Spider-Man going undercover in the Dark Avengers,
Uh-huh.
and like that one scene where Bullseye picks his nose, and that's like all I really remembered. So it
That's
was
funny.
kind of interesting going back to this, but
Yeah.
yeah, that is American
Mhm.
Son.
Mhm.
To wrap this episode up, we're going to be talking about our cultured picks.
Yeah.
What do you have this week?
This week I picked Big Game number one, and this is a crossover with all of Mark Millar's original
Hmm.
superheroes. So the Kingsman, Kick-Ass, Nemesis, all of
Oh,
those
that's
heroes.
cool.
I've never actually read any of the comics other than the Kick-Ass ones we've covered, but
Hmm.
I picked this up because the cover that I got actually had Kick-Ass on the cover, and so I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So the story is basically in the 80s, there's this secret society of villains that killed off all the world's superheroes.
Hmm.
And then they kind of created this whole like basically all of modern society as we know it is like a facade that they kind of built around everything after they took over the world.
Okay.
And that's sort of starting to crack because all the heroes are coming back. And so they hire a kind of evil Batman character called Nemesis to
Yeah.
kind of kill off all the other heroes again.
Okay.
And so it's sort of a crossover. I really liked it. It's really cool. It's really cool
Hmm.
to see this new universe that I've never really seen other than kick-ass books and be like, oh, there's all these characters and all this lore, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, Image is really interesting. Just like all
Mhm.
the different characters and stories they have, I feel like really kind of get overshadowed by Marvel and DC.
Right,
And like
right.
part of that's because they're a lot more violent because they have a lot more
Mm,
freedom to
yeah,
tackle stuff in Image. But I think there is like a lot of really good
yeah,
characters
for
and
sure.
stories in Image. And yeah, I've heard of Nemesis before. He's like a psycho.
Mhm.
He's sort of like Moon Knight and Batman meets Joker almost.
Right,
He's like
right.
pretty nuts, but it seems pretty interesting. I think they've tried to make a movie about him at some point, but it just never
Yeah,
has come to
Netflix
fruition.
signed some kind of deal with Mark Miller, so they kind of can
Okay.
produce any of the properties other than Kingsman, I
Okay.
guess, because Fox owns Kingsman. But
Yeah.
any of the properties, and so there's some of them that are they've attempted to adapt. I think there's one coming out, American Jesus or something, coming out later this
Mm.
year. But yeah, so I think there's some properties that are either in development or have been at some point in the past.
Was Jupiter's Legacy Mark Miller?
I think it was, yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know
Yeah.
if that ties into this at all.
I don't think it does. I think it's
Yeah,
self-contained, but yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of good characters. I hope they get
mhm,
adaptations soon.
for sure, for sure.
But yeah, my pick this week is Night Terrors the Joker.
Uh,
So Night Terrors is the current story arc, like overarching crossover event happening at DC right now,
mhm, mhm.
and it's basically like this guy. I think his name is Insomnia. He's this
Yeah,
new villain that basically is preying on all the characters' dreams. Like he forces them to fall asleep, and then they're kind of trapped in this nightmare world.
mhm,
And there's like a separate book for almost every like major character.
yeah,
So the Joker got his own one, his own book. Oh, I find like interesting about this is pretty much all the other ones are very horror esque.
mhm,
This one is just kind of funny, which I feel
yeah,
like fits the Joker. But like his worst nightmare is having an office job.
mm,
like he ends up at the very beginning killing Batman, finally succeeding in killing Batman. And then after that, he doesn't really have anything to do. He doesn't have any like find any joy in crime anymore. So
Yeah.
he ends up getting a job at like Wayne Enterprises, I think.
Mm.
And yeah, he's basically just working in an office job, but still like making like crazy sadistic jokes.
Mm.
But everyone just like laughs along with him. They don't think he's weird, really,
Interesting.
even though he's totally acting like a psycho still. And he even
Right.
like microwaves a dude's head in like the break room for being annoying. And people are just like, "Oh, you know." It's it's kind of funny. And he ends up
That's
like
yeah.
yeah, he ends up getting a promotion, and he's like, "What? Really? I'm doing a
Mm.
terrible job." And they're like, "No, you're great." And it's like it's a pretty entertaining comic. So
That's funny.
yeah. But I think that man, there's probably like 20 different
Yeah,
like Night
most
Terror
of the
things.
main stories are tying in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like having a hard time not like stop myself from trying to buy all of them. No,
Right. Right.
because like I really do like the horror
Mhm.
vibes to this Night Terrorist thing.
For sure.
But yeah, definitely check out some of them
Yeah.
if you are into collecting comics because it's
Mhm.
pretty interesting. It's not like a huge event necessarily, but it is a pretty decent sized crossover.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that is our show for this week. Thanks so much for joining us. If you liked this episode, check out our other episodes and please like and subscribe, share, and be sure to check out our future episodes. If you'd like to check out the Cultured Nerd on social media and their YouTube channel, you can use the QR code on the bottom left. And if you would like to check out Casual Experts, which is me and Luke's other brand, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right. If you would like to help support us, we can bring you more great content. You can check us out on patreon.com/theculturednerd. And if you would like to support our show specifically, you can look for our show specific tier on that page. Thank you to all of our current Patreon supporters, Wesley H., Mitch S., Connor Y., Anna M., Oscar B., Craig L., and Celeb K. We have been your hosts, Michael and Luke, and our logo and visual assets were designed by Jose Navarro, and our intro was designed by myself. Until next time.